Hi everybody and welcome back to our channel, Be Our Friend. I'm Christina.
And I'm Aubrey. And we're just going to continue off from where we left off with part 1.
This is part 2.
Part 2 of Heartbreak.
Heartbreak episode.
So if you haven't watched the first episode, go watch it so you know what's happening.
Are we going to bring it in right here like that? This is the episode.
We'll see what
I'm
I
really
can do in
acting
editing.
like Aubrey's like just this queen editor. I'm like, the
We'll see what I
the
can
episode,
do.
the episode. But it's a great episode. Aubrey's got some good stories. Mine are okay. Hers are great.
Oh,
but you know,
please.
I'm fishing for compliments. I am. Okay. Part 2, we're really going to be diving into how to get over intense heartbreaks or what has worked for us in the past. We're also going to just sort of wrap up what we were talking about with some of the more intense heartbreaks we felt, because I only talked about my first heartbreak. You talked about your epic heartbreak. But kind of just wrap it up. You know, when you're in it, it feels all encompassing.
It does.
It is overwhelming, and I think, you know, I've also been on the other side of like comforting friends, as have you. And as a friend, sometimes you're like, move on. Like, you have to get over it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I've been that person. I've been the person that's been helping that person. You know, it's again, it's just part of the human experience. I think almost everybody, I mean, even if you marry your high school sweetheart or your middle school sweetheart, I mean, just sometimes it's like, shit will break your heart.
Yeah.
TM.
I mean, I've been dumped, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I've also been the one doing the dumping. And that's a different kind of heartbreak.
Yes.
Because you feel bad and, you know, but obviously it's not the same because when you're the one getting broken up with, sorry, there are people walking on my ceiling for some reason, if you can hear that. When you're the one getting broken up with, you don't want it to end. You know, it's basically something is ripped from you without your consent. So that's what makes it hurt really bad.
Especially with you where you were blindsided in the example you told us. Like, it's horrible.
But if you do the dumping, you know, you're ready to move on. So the heartbreak isn't the same. And then I've also experienced heartbreak before a relationship actually ended.
Oh, same. I think we should talk about that.
Knowing that a relationship should end.
It's so awful.
Staying in that relationship for an extended period of time. And so mourning it before it's actually over.
And that's almost the worst thing.
It's terrible.
To just piggyback off of that. So my like long-term like college and then into my early 20s boyfriend, it was the same kind of thing. And we can get into this more in later episodes, but exactly what you said. I knew it was like fully over in my heart probably a year before we actually ended it. And then in my head, maybe like even 5 months before, even like it took that long to unentangle because I was living with him and maybe, and when you were living with someone, and I know we're both married now, and I still can tell you as a married person, to an extent, it felt like a divorce. It did. And I know we weren't married, but when you have a life with somebody, especially when it's, you know, for really any amount of time, but for several years, and you've bought all your furniture together and you move to this place, and then when you know, when it's ending, or you know it's ending and you know it has to end, I mean, for me, there was so much shame surrounding it where this was the person that everyone thought, oh, Christina and this person are going to be getting married, and this is my whole family. I mean, of course he knew my family. I knew his family. I mean, we traveled it was like we were together, and we were only together for like 4.5 years, a little over 4 years. But again, it just felt so intense. And when I knew that it needed to end, it needed to end probably even longer. Like even before my heart even realized it needed to end, it probably needed to end like as soon as it started, honestly. Yeah. But I'm still so grateful for it because it led me to where I am now. But the shame I felt knowing like, oh my gosh, like this isn't it. The tears I cried, I remember being alone in my apartment and just crying, being like, this is it, this is over. And then it still took me probably another 5 months for him to move out, for us to fully move on, and for me to start dating again.
No, I went through something similar where probably a year before we actually broke up, I just started having all these feelings of, there has to be more than this.
This isn't it.
Why are we arguing all the time? I'm so not a fighter, so.
Same. We had also what years were
really
this?
Bad
Horrible
sides of myself.
Same.
Yeah, this would have been like 2012, 2013.
It's similar time. That's why it's curious. We weren't friends yet, but I feel like there was a twin flame energy that we were both literally experiencing the same thing at the same time without knowing each other. Same years even.
And it's interesting when you talk to someone who's gone through something similar, because when you have, me and this person were together for about 3 years. Obviously, we'd met each other's families on multiple occasions. We were living together. There's so much tied with this person. And I was young. I literally had to reach the point where, and I think I had to do this at this time, I had to reach the point where I said, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I would rather be alone than be in this relationship. And it had to get to the point where it did not matter what anyone said. I remember my parents being confused and saying, what? Like, we thought you guys would get married. We thought this. And I was like, no. And you don't see us on the day-to-day. I live over 1,000 miles away. You don't really know what's going on. Trust me, I know what is best for me. This relationship is over. And I truly felt that he wasn't fully happy either. So I kind of felt that I had to be the one to end it so that we both could go on and thrive in relationships that would actually make us happy. Right. And in the end, he did end up seeing that side of it as well. But sometimes I think you do have to see it through to that point to know for sure it's over and you never go back to that person because you saw it through as much as you could. You literally fought for it as long as you could.
For years longer than you maybe even should have.
For way longer than I would ever need to now. Just because, you're young. You don't know. It's your first really, really long-term relationship. You're living together with somebody for the first time.
And again, your family's only seeing a piece of it, and to bring them back into it as well. And I think you touched on this, which is they're a little bit blindsided by it potentially. Or like my family my parents, again, I've said this before, but they got together at 18. So they're like, again, this is it. Like they weren't used to, wait, maybe it takes a little while. And of course they were accepting of that, but they're like, wait, so you still, now it's your second serious boyfriend. You have to date even more? Like and it wasn't that they were upset by that, but that was so different than what they'd been used to. So again, I didn't have anyone saying like, hey, this seems bad. However, which this was very interesting. My brother at one point was visiting me and this boyfriend, and he was with one of his best friends. And he pulled me aside at one point, my brother did, and said, what is wrong with you? Basically, like, I've never seen you like this in your entire life. I'm not someone who fights or who is a yeller, or I'm lucky that way. It's just not part of my disposition. When Bryant and I are in arguments, like I'm very metered, I'm very calm, don't yell, I'm not from a yelling family, I don't like that. That's really not my deal.
Yeah, I don't love it either.
But when I was with this partner, Aubrey, exactly what you said, I couldn't even recognize myself. There were many times where I would be this like sort of bird's eye view perspective. I would almost leave my body and look up at myself being like, what is happening, girlfriend? Like, this is not good. You were in trouble. This is not who you are. Like, what is happening? Ignore society. Who cares if you need to run?
Yes.
Yes. And it wasn't, again, I'm not saying this is all him, but it was like whatever our chemistry was so awful and explosive.
Yes. And that's the hardest thing is it's not always all bad. There are obviously good moments, and you latch onto those when you're in these rough times, or when you start thinking about wanting to break up, you remember the good stuff too. But there should be more good days than bad days. And I went through something similar where I am so not a fighter, but I remember we were in this argument, and he kind of was a fighter. Like he didn't mind. Oh,
some people grow up in families like that, and they're really okay with it.
I don't even think that. I don't know. He was a Taurus. He was kind of bullheaded, and I know Brian's a Taurus. But
all of these guys are Tauruses, by the way. Every guy I've seriously dated is a Taurus. So
and that's my moon sign. So I don't know, but he just was very bullheaded and very stubborn. And we had some political differences, and there was one thing that I just thought, I'm sorry, this is a human right, and I just remember one time we got in this argument, and it was just, we cannot talk about this anymore. I'm getting upset. And he would just push and push and push. And I just remember getting so angry. I literally, I had this like notebook in my hand, and I just screamed, and I threw it down the hallway, and it like hit the back wall. And in that moment, I just kind of went quiet, and I went straight to my room and I closed the door, and I just sat down on the bed, and I just was like, who are you?
Yes.
Like, what just happened? I've never, ever in my life acted that way.
Literally, yes.
And I was just like, what does this person bring out in me? Like, I do not enjoy this, because every person has a breaking point.
Of course.
Obviously.
Of course.
And I think at that point, there were already so many signs and signals that we were not great together. But I think that was the true turning point where it was all downhill from there. Then everything I was viewing from this lens of, is this actually me, or is this who I am with this person? And to be fair, maybe I didn't bring out the best sides of them either.
Right, but it's scary. Did you have that feeling? Because I remember when I was with this partner, and there were times where we'd be screaming at each other, that I was just like, is this, like, I hate this. Is this who I am? I have never been this person. And again, my brother's saying, like, I don't recognize you. My family come out and be like, why? You know, I was mean to him too. But we were doing it. It was so bad that we were like fighting publicly. Not only was it behind closed doors, it had infiltrated our, you know, our social circle, our friendship. I mean, it was bad. And exactly to your point earlier, I remember he was picking me up from the airport once, and now it just seems so trivial and silly. And again, it was years ago, but of course, you never forget how you feel. Maybe you don't remember what was said, but you always remember how you feel. And I'm in the car, and he's like screaming at me about something. And I literally, exactly what you said, I start screaming bloody murder. I've never done this before. I hope to never do it again. I am screaming at the top of my lungs, like I'm basically like pounding on it. I mean, it's insane. Basically being like, help, like it was that bad. Again, was anything happening? Nothing like physically. I mean, physically I was having a reaction, but it was just, we couldn't have been like in a worse place, like emotionally. We were just such a bad fit. And, you know, and like, again, I hope I do have love in my heart for this person. We were together a long time, but like, gosh, and I have no idea what they're up to now, and I hope they're okay. But it was like, wow, were we not it? And then, it was just, but again, the shame I felt of realizing like, I don't think that when you really understand and to your core that this is not your person, and all of the years and all of the holidays and the presents and the meeting the grandparents and spending time with them, and all of that was just for nothing, even though it wasn't, but it felt like that. The shame I felt of like, I'm gonna have to tell everybody and say, hey, I know you really like this person. It's done. And I just felt so embarrassed. I felt like, how did I not know better? How did I let it get this far? Because too, and I wonder if you have this as well, very early on, now looking back, because again, hindsight is 20/20, and having perspective now, again, of being many years older too, but I remember now looking back, the writing was on the wall, truly, Aubrey, from day one, that this was not my person. But I ignored all of that, and we can talk about that in a later episode, because I was like, this is my person. And that might be better to be saved for a later episode, but it was interesting.
You make excuses for things because there are good moments, and I think
falling in love is so addicting.
As soon as we broke up and I felt relief, I knew that I had made the right decision.
Yes, that relief.
And because I kind of been experiencing the heartbreak for so long.
For years.
That when it was over, I didn't really have a lot of heartbreak.
Oh gosh, no.
I felt very
joyful. I felt joyful. It was a weight that had been lifted. Once it finally happened, that really sad crying in my apartment when I realized it was done. Months went by. We finally break up, and I was like, it's done.
Yeah.
I've been the happiest I'd ever been. I lived alone for a really long time, and that was so special. I started dating again because, you know, on the one hand, you could say like, well, how could you start dating right away? But it's like we broke up officially in June. I started dating in September. He lived with me that whole summer because he didn't have a place to go. So I had him stay with me. I had a 2-bedroom, and I was like, I love you. I care about you. We are not working out. And I thought this was nice of me. I waited until he left, and then I was like, now I'm going to start dating. And it was so fun. I was like, the joy I felt from like finding myself again and realizing like, this is what I want, and this is what I want, and this is what works. And I didn't think I was going to have that. There was a time there where I was like, this is it. Buckle up, which is so silly and naive, but I didn't know. When you're in it, it feels forever.
It feels forever, and it is sad to say goodbye to all of the time that you've spent together. However, you know, people stay in relationships. If you're staying in a relationship and you know it's doomed, just get out.
Yep.
Just get out, because if you're already feeling that, why would you waste any more of your time in that situation when the right person could pass you the next day or cross your path in the next month, and you're not going to be there to meet them because you're in this other relationship, this bad relationship, you know? But I'm thankful for the experience. I learned a lot from that, and now that person is, you know, happily married and living the life that, you know, I could see for them that that I don't think I could have been able to provide for them. And so I think, you know, in the end, it all worked out. And as much as there's always an adjustment, and especially if you're living with someone, God, there's even more of an adjustment, but it's worth it in the end. And
then I think too, like, you know, yeah, it's just, you know, it just takes time it can take time to move on, but then when that happens, and again, you get to kind of start exploring like what feels good and getting back out there, and your friends get to see a side of you that some of my friends, I don't think I'd met you. This was at the tail end of my relationship with him. I don't think I knew you yet, but the friends that knew me kind of in the relationship and then outside of it were like, oh, like your spark is back. My family noticed that, where they're like, oh, it's kind of good to see you again. And I know that that's, you know, it's hard. And again, we're also not speaking about we don't have children. I can only imagine how hard it must be if you're in a marriage and you have kids. You know, if you're married, I mean, there is like a legal aspect to that, and having to divorce. Like, actually, we didn't divorce, although it felt like it. It wasn't an actual divorce. But to have to really divorce, or again, when children are involved, like, I feel for people, and I still think
because
like,
then that person is a part of your life.
Right. Forever. Exactly. And it's like, exactly. And it's like I still think you have to do whatever is best for you, but I can just sort of, I just feel for you. I empathize that just must be an even harder decision, you know?
Yeah, and hard on your kids and stuff.
Yes.
Even though I think it's necessary. If you're unhappy, it's healthier for your kid to, and we'll cover this in a divorce episode.
And I think as well, let's talk about what we did to kind of move on productively, and again, for this relationship especially, and maybe we'll talk about your epic heartbreak as well, like how to soothe from heartbreak, whether you're the one doing it or experiencing it.
I was so young that really that one just took a lot of time. That one took just a lot of time to heal. For me, if I'm experiencing a heartbreak, I cry a lot. Yep. That's just me. I cry a lot.
HSP, highly sensitive poetry. Person. Yeah.
It's one of the best. It's when I've written some of my most favorite poems is when I'm experiencing heartbreak, because there's so much emotion and it's so easy to put into words. Right. I say that, spending a lot of time with friends, and especially girlfriends, and just being able to, you know, remind yourself that having a partner is not everything, that you have so many partners in life that aren't romantic, and people that love you and are there for you and support you. Strangely, watching like Sex and the City or some show
that was like my show during
big on dating.
Yes,
because it reminds you how fun it is to date.
Exactly.
And it makes you feel more excited to kind of get out there.
And they're in their 30s, and you know what? It's like, and now they're in their 50s or early 60s right now, even with the new season. It's like, and then the timing doesn't matter. It's, you know, it's just when it's supposed to happen for you, it will, and that you're going to kiss a lot of frogs potentially. And, you know, all of those things are just true. And I think sometimes when you're in that headspace where it feels dark and scary and maybe you don't see a way out, or you're just overwhelmed by it, watching shows like that just, they're light and they're fun, and they cover it in such a true, there's a lot of truth to it, a true way. And yeah, that was really helpful. Sex and the City, I think I watched it, the whole series at least once during that breakup time. Yeah. And then for me too, became actually addicted. Like I had to stop watching it to The Office, the American Office. It was one of my favorite shows in high school.
Addiction.
I did. It became so bad, guys, that I watched the entire series all the way through, except for the last couple seasons because I didn't prefer those as much, over 100 times. Not 2 times, not 4 times. Every single day, I'd wake up, I'd hit play, and I'd just go about my life. And there was a time there where I could quote most of the series verbatim, start to finish. Like, that's insane. That's not normal behavior. That was my coping mechanism when
they were your friends.
Right, when my partner had left and I was alone for the first time, and I'm 25, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm dating, sure, and I'm working, but I had all this time, and I'm 3,000 miles away from home, and my brother didn't live out here yet, and I'm just like, I wasn't lost. Again, it was so important that this happened to me, but I didn't even realize. Backtrack. I just realized that I actually started watching the show as the relationship was ending because I needed something comforting, and that show was that comfort for me because I was so scared and I didn't always know who to talk to, and I felt so embarrassed, but they couldn't judge me. I mean, it's like so sweet and sad, but that show was like everything to me at the time, and so not only did it carry me through the breakup, because it 1,000% did. I mean, now that I'm just remembering that, oh my gosh, it wasn't after the breakup, it was like 2 years before we broke up. I started watching it constantly, and then afterwards, and then it was maybe a year after the breakup that I turned it off, and I really haven't watched an episode since. Every now and then it'll be on, and there's beautiful memories, but I still am like, oh, that represents such a specific time in my life, and I love that show with my whole heart, but oh my gosh, I literally had to take a break because I was like, it's becoming too much of my identity. It's becoming like,
like, wait, maybe I have a problem.
I do. Like, people are just talking, like having normal conversations, and I'm just starting to quote The Office in the middle, but we're talking like not normal quotes.
This is a really good sketch, actually.
Oh, truly, guys.
Like, she went through a breakup.
And she's not doing so hot. Yeah, sorry, you guys. She's just really, really weird and really loves The Office. Anyway, so that was a comfort to me. So I guess something that's healthy. I'm healthy enough. Working out, hanging out with friends.
I think, friends are such a
life raft
of when you're going through heartbreak, because truly you're missing companionship. You're missing having, you're so used to, I think, when you're in a relationship, spending so much of your time with this person, and then when they're gone, you suddenly have all this free time, which I think can be a beautiful thing, because you start focusing on yourself more.
Right, self-love. Right.
You have time to go, do things that you didn't have that time before because you were with someone. So go out with your friends more. Right. Go to that concert that maybe you would have passed up before, or just spend time cuddling your friends and watching a movie. I think it can, it just reminds you of how loved you are, and that
the intimacy of those relationships can carry you, much further than you think sometimes,
I kind of feel like the one thing that separates, a friendship and a relationship usually is the intimacy, like the literal physical intimacy. But you can have such strong emotional intimacy with so many people in your life. They all provide these different things, and so it's I think it's just important to lean on the important people in your life when you're going through that heartbreak.
I agree. Yeah, it's just it's one of those things that it feels so dark when you're in it, and scary, and and these are just serious relationships we have. We could do a whole other episode on people that I didn't have monogamous or committed relationships with, and the heartbreak to an extent that I felt from those was very real. Or to me, it was a lot of like the what might have been, and that would be a potentially interesting topic to discuss. Like guys that I maybe only dated for 6 weeks or 3 months, but at the time, it felt so real, and there was so much potential. And you future trip, and you think, okay, I'm going to, this is someone I'm going to marry, and I'm going to be his parents. And then when it just comes out, it's like, the rug kind of gets pulled out from under you, especially because they don't know you anything. Oh my gosh, that heartbreak is. Sometimes that was almost more painful to me, because it's shorter, but it's in that moment you're like, oh my gosh, I was a fool,
I mean, my first love heartbreak, that was at 17, I think back and I'm like, God, she was so young. But I I really loved that person.
Yes.
I really did.
Yes.
And it was the first, and the first is intense, and it's
right,
all encompassing.
Yes.
And you've never felt anything like that before in your life, and you know, still to this day, I care for that person. Of
course you do.
So much.
Sure.
Even more than the epic breakup.
Yes, because it
person.
was your first.
You know, it was the
right.
first, and it's such a pure, like
Yes.
innocent love. You know, when you think back to that, but. Yeah, I mean, heartbreak is universal. It is something we all experience, and there's all different types of heartbreak. Sometimes not even relationship heartbreak, friendship heartbreak.
Your favorite TV show ends.
Your favorite TV show.
That's a heartbreak in and of itself.
I have lots of heartbreaks in the books that I read.
There you go. Oh, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, if you guys are open to sharing your heartbreak stories, you know, feel free to drop them in the comments. We hope that you feel understood and seen from this conversation. And
we love you guys. And thanks for tuning in. It means the world. And we will definitely catch you on the next one.
Yes. And if you're currently experiencing, Christina's out, if you're currently experiencing a heartbreak, we send you our love.
You're being serious. Yes, we do send you our love.
Eat ice cream, cookies, you know.
Whatever you can, if you're allowed to eat that.
Show,
exactly.
Lean on your friends. And just know there's a version of you in the future looking back on this time, laughing about it.
Smiling, giving you a big hug just like we did.
It all was for a reason.
It all was for a reason. You are loved. We love you. And you're going to be okay. And we have been there for sure. We have been there. We've been there. We have been there. I said the part when you said the cookies, and I said they're not allowed to eat that because I wanted to say in case people had dairy or gluten allergies, and now
she does have dairy.
I know, but but now it's going to sound like you're not allowed to eat cookies.
Well, you're saying
you're allowed
now.
to eat whatever you want. You can eat
Christina
whatever you want.
loves cookies.
I love cookies.
Every time
I love
she
dairy.
comes over, she
I love
asks me if I
dairy.
have candy.
I do. Gosh, we're gonna do a whole episode on favorite food. Tune in.
Okay.
And on that note,
bye.
Bye.